Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we finally get around to covering the recent State of the Union speech President Trump gave in the Capitol in Washington, D.C. For those who don't know, the State of the Union is an annual speech in which the U.S. President addresses the Congress and the country, talking about how our country is doing now and what we're planning to do in the future. Although much of the pomp and ceremony behind the State of the Union address is governed by tradition rather than law in modern times, the event is still seen as one of the important dates on the U.S. political calendar. It is one of the few instances when all three branches of the U.S. government are assembled under one roof. Members of both houses of Congress constituting the legislature, the President's cabinet constituting the executive, and the Chief Justice and Associate Justices of the Supreme Court constituting the judiciary. In addition, the military is represented by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, while foreign governments are represented by the Dean of Diplomatic Corps. The address has also been used as an opportunity to honor the achievements of some ordinary Americans, who were typically invited by the President to sit with the First Lady. Lots of cool people are there, some of the most important power players in the world, so needless to say, it's pretty interesting to watch. Now this State of the Union speech usually takes place in late January, but as many of you know, the US government was shut down for most of that month due to disagreements in passing our budget. This not only caused the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, to try and cancel the speech out of spite towards Trump, but also, this delay actually made this year's State of the Union more hyped than ever. Things always seem to play out in Trump's favor with things like this, and the 2019 State of the Union address was no different. Not only did Trump deliver one of the best speeches of his career, promising to continue our work on securing the border and a slew of other bipartisan efforts as well, but also, Trump's speech of course really triggered the Democrats once again, and they really came out looking like fools here again too. The president's main strategy to achieve this is to, again, announce a number of bipartisan, undeniably good things, like say, record low unemployment. Creating jobs for Americans is something all politicians should get behind, but as predicted, the Democrats' hatred for Trump clouded their better judgment here. So as the normal people stood and clapped for all these great things happening for our country, Democratic hacks like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, they sat down in shame, making their party look even worse in the process. Also, I thought it was extremely ironic how all of the Democratic women decided to coordinate their outfits, wearing all white to this event. Not only is this color coordinating childish and something high schoolers would do, but also, I don't think Democrats should be wearing all white after the scandal they just had in Virginia earlier this week. The Democratic governor there recently got caught wearing a KKK hood and blackface in some of his yearbook photos, and now the Democrats in Congress are wearing all white after that? What the heck? These are some really bad optics, guys. Speaking of that Virginia situation, it actually gets much worse there when you look into it. Not only is the governor there in hot water over these racist photos, but also his second in command is getting shit right now for a sexual assault violation. I heard the third in line there was also caught wearing blackface as well. So all three of these guys, all Democrats, they're all getting engrossed in a really bad controversy. And not to get too sidetracked from our main story here, but this Virginia situation does tie back to the State of the Union quite a bit. You see, first of all, in the daytime before the speech on Tuesday, Bernie Sanders was approached by reporters, asking him to comment on the sexual assault accusations being levied at the Virginia Lieutenant Governor named Fairfax. But instead of condemning him or even addressing the accusations at all, Bernie decided to fake a phone call to get out of it as he ran away from reporters scared like a little baby. Here's a little clip of what happened that day.
Now, do you believe Justin Fairfax? His accuser? His accuser.
Okay, Ari. Okay. What time
You don't.
meeting? Excuse me. Stop
You're not on the.
following me
You're not
around,
on the
please.
phone. You're not
Okay,
on the
but-
phone,
Excuse me.
sir. I'm asking you a question.
And you can clearly see from this still that Bernie is in fact not on a phone call as he pretended. And whatever happened to Democrats wanting to listen and believe women? When Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh had multiple random accusers come after him and try and halt his nomination a few months ago, all of the Democrats were more than happy to believe the accusers. But now when it's one of their own Democrats being accused, Bernie and others completely ignore it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is another Democrat who refuses to address this accusation levied at Lieutenant Governor Fairfax. She hasn't mentioned it once, while she still, to this day, complains about the false accusations against Kavanaugh, which of course were debunked and dissolved long ago, back at the end of last year. Yet AOC still supports his detractors so much, she even brought one of them as a guest to this State of the Union. That's right. Here's a clip of MSNBC letting AOC's friend come on the air to trash Brett Kavanaugh even after the allegations against him fell apart. Take a look at this bullcrap.
I am sad that the Supreme Court is tainted by a process that puts someone accused of sexual assault in the highest court of the land. I think he represents, in many ways, the inability of many politicians to actually understand that their role is to govern by listening.
I hope you're seeing the wide and gaping disconnect here, guys. Kavanaugh is assumed guilty because he's a Republican. Any accusation made against him is still considered true by Democrats, even though they were debunked and brushed away as false long ago. Meanwhile, at the same time, these same Democrats won't even comment on one of their own being accused, in a very similar way. The Virginia Lieutenant Governor has very similar accusations made against him, but the left-wingers won't even address it at all, because they're fake liar frauds who are biased and politically corrupt, and they have no morals or self-awareness.
Who are trying to, with their stories, educate them. And in many ways, I feel sad for the many decisions that Kavanaugh is going to make that are going to impact many, many people, millions of people, my children probably, and women.
I love how AOC just chimes in with women after listening to her friend say all that bullshit. Alex has to make sure to get that point across. Women are more important to them, and of course, so are Democrats. But actually, I don't think that's quite true. The lefties want you to think that they love the ladies, but they're really just using them and minorities to try and get their way. They get victim points for propping up women, specifically propping up women who are supposed sexual assault victims. They like to use these victims as props to try and tear down their political opponents, like what they tried to do with Brett Kavanaugh. And meanwhile, while this is going on, Democrats who get accused of sex abuse, they get a free pass, because the left doesn't really care about women. They only care about it when it serves them, and that's the worst kind of caring, really.
LGBTQ families, workers, all of us, and that those decisions are always going to be tainted by a process that I continue to believe was irresponsible, and the people deserve better.
Congresswoman, thank you. Congratulations, by the way. We've never met.
Gotta love these grimaces here. These are the new faces of the Democratic Party. They're young, dumb, and full of socialism. That's for sure. And they're also supporting the worst people possible. MSNBC should not be letting this kind of crazy person lie on the air like this unquestioned. And AOC shouldn't be bringing some out-of-control crazy person as her guest to the State of the Union. As the title on the news here says, this lady on the left confronted Jeff Flake over the Kavanaugh nomination. Well, that's a pretty nice way of saying she went off the deep end and was screaming and yelling and crying at the guy like an unhinged psychopath. And this is the kind of person AOC wanted to bring to the State of the Union, her first State of the Union. She's bringing someone who supports the lies flung at Justice Kavanaugh, supporting those lies still to this day. What a goddamn joke.
I told it because I recognize in Dr. Ford's story that she's telling the truth. What you are doing is allowing someone who actually violated a woman to sit in the Supreme Court. This is not tolerable. You have children in your family. Think about them. I have 2 children. I cannot imagine that for the next 50 years.
Things get even worse for Democrats from here, though. As I said, many love commenting on the things that they stood for and cheered for. And also, more interestingly, the things the left-wingers didn't applaud for was very telling. For example, AOC sat down with a mean, angry look on her face the entire speech, like her boyfriend just broke up with her. Not totally surprising, but I do think it is interesting. This is a 29-year-old who was a bartender this time last year. You'd think she'd be at least a little excited to be at her first State of the Union event, but no. She acted like a spoiled child who didn't get her way all night. Here's a response AOC tweeted after the speech. It said, "Why should I be spirited and warm for this embarrassment of a State of the Union? Tonight was an unsettling night for our country. The president failed to offer any plan, any vision at all for our future. We're flying without a pilot, and I'm not here to comfort anyone about that fact." What a negative Nancy. That's a pretty interesting response here too, considering what the president actually spoke about. I don't know if AOC was really listening, but here's my takeaway of what Trump wants from his speech. Trump wants to end sex trafficking. He wants minorities to succeed and to end the many wars the Americans are involved in. He also wants to build more infrastructure, fight hate, and an end to partisanship, while also protecting babies from infanticide or murder. And he wants to protect the United States from foreign threats as well. Trump also recognized war heroes that night, and Holocaust survivors, and even Buzz Aldrin, a US astronaut who landed on the goddamn moon. But for some reason, AOC thinks all of this is unsettling and an embarrassment. Please, if anyone was getting embarrassed that night, it was clearly AOC AOC and the Democrats. Another really embarrassing moment for the left here was when socialism came up in the speech. Trump made it pretty clear that socialism would never happen in America, and a large majority of the crowd there was on board with this, even booing socialism when it was brought up. But this of course upset the socialists in the room, namely AOC, who was always looking mean and ugly and terrible, but also admitted socialist Bernie Sanders had a pretty mad look at his face at this point. I myself couldn't be happier though. Socialism is a terrible idea that never works in practice. So unless Americans want our country to fall apart like Venezuela, then socialism is never a good idea. Finally, let's wrap things up by talking about another embarrassing Democrat, Stacey Abrams. For some reason, the left decided to put this woman in charge of the Democratic response to Trump's speech, despite her being a terrible black lady no one's ever heard of. And also, Abrams just lost her election in Georgia, but I guess since she's a female minority, the Democrats still want to keep her around for the victim points. And to make matters even worse here, sources close to Abrams even admitted that she didn't actually watch the president's speech. She wrote her response beforehand, based on the president's previous policies and positions. Well done, Democrats. Your response to the State of the Union wasn't even a response to it. Despite getting the first black woman to do this thing, she couldn't even do it right. But I guess being black and female is all it takes for Democrats to listen and believe these days. Well, as long as the person is a Democrat too, who will come out against Republicans like Trump and Brett Kavanaugh. In the end, we've seen the Democrats show their true colors here once again. And besides those colors being all white, usually with hoods and lynch mobs like in the past, well, besides that, we've also seen how biased and unscrupulous Democrats have become. They have no shame, no morals, and nothing worth fighting for either. Democrats pretend to care about women and justice and sexual abuse survivors, but they are noticeably mum when these accusations attack people on their side. Not to mention all the great points Trump made in his speech. So while the president is talking about undeniably good things like security, safety, jobs, and supporting our troops, Democrats are against all that, because really, they don't want Trump to get credit for it. The left is literally hoping our country gets worse, just so they can spite a president they don't like. That's why they're acting like babies at the State of the Union, and that's why they won't pass any laws to help our country now. What do you guys think? Did you watch the State of the Union? Do you think the Democrats got triggered? And what do you think will happen eventually with the whole Virginia governor situation? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, and we'll see y'all next time.